Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Deadlock and Load, episode 18. My name is Cryptic here with BSJ, and I'm happy to say we've got a fun little few topics to talk about today. Before we jump into those, of course, gotta say hello, Brian. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm ready to talk about the direction that, Deadlock's going with. They moved it to the 3 lanes, and now they're going to have to kind of tweak the rules of the game to make it align with the vision. So I feel like every time we come back in for a new episode, we're seeing just a little bit closer approach. We're like approaching the equilibrium that this game is eventually going to reach.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? We see massive changes recently with the change to the 3 lanes. And now what we're kind of seeing is like letting the dust settle, right? Like we really shook the thing up. So now we're kind of see how it feels. We've had a couple patches already, and then most recently two actually pretty minor balance patches, but they do have a fairly large impact on how the game is played. And so that's kind of what we're going to start today off with, which is just these little fine-tuned patches, mostly focusing on the jungle, which was completely revamped in the 3 lane meta, or the 3 lane update. The first being, a lot of people were experiencing some issues with the laning experience, being that like certain guns were now far outshining others. Now that like soul orbs were spawning off of every creep regardless, and then the fact that the soul orbs were mostly just going straight up. So they actually increased some of the horizontal movement on them, which does make it a little bit easier for you to secure your own souls as opposed to them just getting denied by someone with a better gun, which is always like a feels good, man. You don't like getting punished because like just existing as a specific hero.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I remember there's been several patches where that's been the case. And when I was specifically learning Warden, that was super frustrating for me across different patches. I felt a different experience of just how unplayable it was to have a gun that had slow bullet velocity. And yeah, just generally making it so that the lane, I liked what we talked about with the lane is that, yeah, all the creeps spawn orbs now because you never missed the last hit, which is great. Encourages people to shoot each other more. But now, like, if you had a bad gun, then if you're just going to lose that deny trade, you're encouraged more. You feel probably pressured to, like, be super aggressive and force them off when in a situation you're kind of creating, like, a unnecessary panic in the player. So anytime, like, that you feel like you have to fight an uphill battle and it feels almost pointless to try, so you'd rather pick something else, that's kind of a gameplay flaw that I think every MOBA eventually runs into, where there's just some heroes that feel unplayable. And a lot of times it's not because the hero got nerfed itself, but simply because some game mechanic that changed was not in that hero's favor. So it's really funny to see the correlations between MOBAs themselves, like Dota and League. Obviously, more so Dota. That's where we come from, but how it plays out in Deadlock as well.
Yeah, like absolutely. And there's a lot of things that carry over. I will say one of the other major changes that we saw from this patch, which we're going to touch on because this little thing was adjusted in both the original first balance patch and then the second one, was kind of the jungle value, right? So the jungles were pretty massively reworked. I feel like there's a lot more gold or souls rather in the jungle, and as a result, we saw the values in neutrals get kind of chopped completely by about 15%, which is, I think, fair. I think there was a little bit too much jungling, a little too much value in there. And then they actually adjusted the sinner sacrifices twice. So this went originally from an 8-minute original spawn to a 4-minute interval spawn. Now, after the two patches, it's still the 8-minute original spawn, but now a 5-minute respawn. So this kind of just slows down overall the amount of kind of like everyone refers to it as the gamba, right? At this point, like they're just everywhere. You tune into anyone's stream and you're just seeing them punch sinner sacrifices because they're so valuable. The 3 golden statue buffs is insane in terms of how powerful it is. Which kind of brings us to our next point in a moment, which is kind of funny. But yeah, it's sinner sacrifices were just one of the most valuable things on the map, and so slightly reducing the amount of them as the game goes on is I think a good change.
Yeah, and you were talking about how neutrals Basically, we are seeing something similar happen in Deadlock that's happened in Dota a lot of times, where the team that's winning, since there's so much to gain from the map, they were incentivized to just no longer push your base, kind of freeze you out, and consume the map over and over again, including the buffs from Center Sacrifice, because that's something different that we don't see in a lot of other MOBAs, is these permanent buffs that like don't take up item slots. They're not like limited on, like, there's no cap to these. You know, every hero has their Legion Commander duel, effectively the permanent scaling that comes from the golden statue buffs, obviously the golden statues themselves, but also the Center Sacrifice. So I mean, at the end of the day, we said it last time when we were with Jonas, we said it the previous episode as well. Anything that discourages combat between players is generally bad. So if people are so busy punching Center Sacrifices rather than fighting heroes, bad. If they're fighting other heroes over the Center Sacrifices, that's fine. You know what I mean? But anything that is so efficient or so enticing that it's either like too good for the team that's winning to not do it, so they're just going to stick to that rather than fighting, but also so important that the team that's losing, they can't, if they can't contest it, they're just screwed. There has to be some balance in there, right? It's really hard to tweak it and nail it in any of these games. And at the end of the day, whenever you release a big patch, it's the same thing in Dota. What I really like is that there's just certain heroes that are massively buffed. It's like, I think Seven's win rate was like 56-57% or something after the lane change.
In every bracket.
Yeah.
Every bracket.
And why? Because he farms jungle really fast, right? So it's like everyone's complaining about how good Seven is, but what, instead of nerfing Seven, they're like, well, we know why he's broken, because he's like the fastest farmer in the game just with spells. So let's make it so, rather than nerfing the heroes that benefited from this, clearly we gave them too much. Let's just scale back the general rules of the game. So I also feel like, yeah, they're letting the dust settle with these balance changes, but after such a drastic change to the map, it's great to do that, because we talked about balancing not being the most centric focus that we want them to have. But obviously, if you have heroes that are so freaking good based on these changes that it almost makes the game unfun, then at some point you do have to do that. So I like that. I feel like right now we're at like a 70-30, 80-20 mix of like new stuff to the game and like fine tuning and balancing the game.
No, absolutely. And that's why these updates are so small, right? Like we've been seeing in the past when we'd see balance updates to the game, they were pages long.
Yeah.
And these most recent updates, it's like one page, and then the next one was like a couple of lines, right? And it's mostly just to rebalance out the extremes and kind of leave everything else the same. The Valve's main focus right now is not the balance of the game. They're doing so to make it still like playable for the people that are still playing, and to make it more enjoyable. And yes, like it is still important to balance, but like you said, it is not even close to the priority. It's so far down on the list, and so that's why we're seeing less frequent balance patches, but them also being in like a smaller size, as like we're waiting for the next major update, which is probably going to be another set of hero releases. Like it wouldn't surprise us if we're seeing another double hero drop. You know, we know Valve, like their top priority is getting this game out to be a finished product. We think that the 30 heroes is kind of like the base minimum. We've got the 4 in the workshop that they're currently working on. So it's, you know, it's that first. We'll do balancing kind of as like a little side project, but I think these balances actually do affect the game in a major way, which is shows like a pretty, like it shows like kind of the skill that Valve have when it comes to making these types of balance changes, and just good feedback as well that comes from the community as well, because there's a lot of people that are constantly playing and submitting feedback. And if you're playing yourself and you're like, oh, this sucks, like just submit feedback to the forums. Valve reads that and they take it into consideration when they make these types of little balance changes. And I think one of the major ones that was a pain point for a lot of people, especially in competitive, which we'll get to later, was holiday. And people just referred to it as the holiday experience, which is you're just playing the game and then suddenly out of nowhere you get lassoed, you get thrown to the other side of the map, and you get completely one shot. And there was no counter to this. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. It's just the existence of the hero. So once again, holiday gets nerfed pretty heavily. It was bugged actually, I think day 1 of the patch, but they removed the T3 stun completely off of the bounce pad, which I think is good. I think that was probably too much. She already had a lot of CC in her kit, had a lot of burst, but we're just constantly seeing Holiday get nerfed, and I think it's a good thing. personally. It's kind of like the Batrider of Dota, which is what the idea of the hero is, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say you have like Infernus who has Firefly and effectively sticky napalm kind of from Batrider, but when I think of Batrider and Dota, what makes him broken is specifically BKB piercing, but displacement, reliable displacement. So like the higher you go in the skill level of any game, the better people, the more precise people's positioning is, and also like people are more opportunistic in terms of capitalizing on when the opponent is out of position. So just this whole idea of moving a hero a really long distance, in theory, is just broken. It feels like no matter how many times they've nerfed Batrider, I feel like if you look at Dota 2 patch notes Batrider, it's like 90% nerfs. The hero's still picked. Because of the fact that he has this mechanic that is so strong. So having Holiday, I was almost surprised that they initially left the lasso mechanic, like they carried it over into a new game, just because of how troublesome it was to balance in Dota. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they're now struggling to balance the hero that they gave this ability to. Kudos to them for putting themselves up to that challenge. The sad part about Batrider is that the only patches where he isn't picked is where he's so bad you can't even like play the early game. And my only concern, if you leave Holiday as is, obviously keeping the signature lasso is probably important, but I would hope that it doesn't eventually go down that route where, for competitive sake, for balance, they have to like make the rest of the hero so underwhelming that you eventually just become a lasso. Because I feel like in Dota, going like blink all in on a support is more of a thing than it would be in Deadlock, since there's not exactly supports in Deadlock. Sure, there's people that build utility and are more about enabling their teammates, but I feel like if you have a hero that is completely nerfed around one spell in Deadlock, I don't think it would work as well as it does in Dota. So I guess that's a bit of a concern for the future of the game moving forward, just in regards to difficulties of balancing. But obviously, like we said, the majority of their focus is not on this balancing aspect of the game. And these are, for me, I'm just kind of spitballing, theory crafting what the future may hold. But for all we know, they figure it out, and everything I'm saying is pointless. Just like life.
Well, such is life, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah. I will say one of my favorite patch notes, which I mean might be controversial because I know a lot of people loved this, was the nerf to Cold Front. It no longer dealing double damage to creeps. It already has an amazing spirit scaling ratio, which is what made it a really good item for a lot of heroes in the game to just pick up. It fills one of your active slots, which it is problematic because we are kind of getting to a point where certain active items feel like super necessary. So you are kind of getting starved on your 4 active slots, but Cold Front was way too good. The fact that it dealt double damage to creeps, it would one-shot creep waves, it would one-shot medium camps. Like, it was so efficient at farming that it had to get nerfed. I would play a game and I would see 10 Cold Fronts at least on each team. There'd be like one person who was like, I'm kind of like 2 bullet heavy, I can't afford to go Cold Front. But then like the other 5 heroes on each team would have a Cold Front. And it was just, clearly when you see an item being purchased that much, unless it's like the equivalent of a wand from Dota, which will surprisingly enough just got nerfed in the tiny patch, the Resto Locket. But if everyone's buying it, clearly there's something wrong. The numbers might be a little bit too good. So that's what happens there. And then, as I mentioned, the Resto Locket no longer having Spirit Resist, which it's the wand from Dota. It was too good. It is still very good, and I think people are maybe not buying it enough in the lower ranks. I know it's really popular in some of the higher levels or the higher ranks of the game, but try it. If you guys aren't buying Resto Locket, I still think it's a good item. It might surprise you.
Yeah, well, it's always funny about Deadlock. I have a couple thoughts coming from this. So first off, this Cold Front change tells me that like the Dota devs and the Deadlock devs probably talk, or at least they copy each other's notes. Because the recent big patch that came out like a month ago for Dota, there were like 5 or 6 heroes in Dota that had abilities specifically that did more damage to creeps than they did to heroes. and that was something they had like added over time to give these heroes the ability to farm. And in 7.38, they were just like, whoops. And then they just removed all of that from every hero that did bonus damage to creeps, right? So, I guess it's just usually when you turn something either a skill or an item, that now is against its own purpose, original purpose. Like in Dota, for instance, I think of battery assault as a skill that was totally meant to kill people with. That was all it was for. And then they're like, now it does 1.7x damage to creeps or something. So
It was 2 times,
yeah, I think then they nerfed it and then they removed it entirely.
Yeah.
And the point was is that like people could now farm with this spell, and it's like then Clockwork became super good for however long. And it's like a reason I compare that to Cold Front is Cold Front was meant to be like a ganking item, an aggression item, and then now you have a ganking aggression item that also speeds up your farm. One thing I always thought, like, so that you can't have that. You can't have that in a game. An item that does like more than its original intended purpose. You have to be very careful about giving it that.
Yeah.
What I didn't really like when they added stuff like does double damage to creeps is I remember when Return Fire, like back in the day, was like on every single hero. And not only was the Return Fire active really nice, but it gave like 14 spear power and like 250 health or something. Like if you combine like the innate part of a green item plus the actual health bonus. And it's like if you looked at it, it's like, oh, that's actually just not a bad item if you just look at the stats, like ignoring the active itself. I would love if Deadlock looked into more like less, like just almost have the active be so exciting that there's no stats on the item, or like very negligible stats on the item. I personally would like that to be a balance route they consider moving forward. Maybe that's something they tried and it just didn't work. It's especially hard to balance it because they can't adjust the costs of items. Like it's like, okay, this is going to be a tier 2 1250 gold item or a soul item unless we make it a tier 3 or tier 4. Then we can't adjust the price of it. But yeah, so overall the vision for me from this balance aspect of the game, I do like it. You can't have items and abilities that do too much, and so it seems to be what they're kind of fixing up here.
Absolutely. I think there's always something to be said about items that are too good in too many situations, right? And that's where it's like if you see it bought on every hero in every game, something's wrong with the numbers, and it's just a slight adjustment to get it back into the appropriate range. And I think yes, Cold Front's not a dead item. It's still good. It's still like certain heroes that are going to be really strong with it. It's still going to annoy you, but yeah, now everyone else who shouldn't be buying it can like go and open up their active slots with something else, and we'll figure out what ends up being the next really fun and broken item. But I mean, that's pretty much it on the patch notes. Like there's a couple other like really small things in here, like slight lures to Divine Barrier. There was a respawn curve adjustment, which I actually can't now. I like remember writing this down. I can't remember which direction it actually went. I think they moved the max duration respawn further away, so it like kind of like basically like the max respawn was kicking in at I think 30, now it might be 35 minutes or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but they made max respawn, if I'm not mistaken, slightly further into the game. So yeah, but that's about it. Or it was the exact opposite and now it's closer, and I don't remember. So just, be aware of that, I suppose. But it's like little changes like this that's actually kind of nice, because like we said, their main goal, focusing on the big updates that are going to come out here fairly soon, and some kind of fun big updates, things that we've been talking about in the past, is like what Valve's big reveal is going to be for Deadlock. And boy oh boy is the community running away with this one now. So there was another quote unquote leak of a Valve tournament, and this popped up on the Deadlock Reddit, and it was called the Continental. And everyone's like, that's a pretty reliable name. Like, I could see that being the name based on the fact that we have something called the International. And then you like looked at the dates and you're like, it's set for like early June, like kind of weird. I don't know. And then now the whole community is just running away with this meme that like everyone's just making their own little like kind of image of like a random Valve poster, taking a weird photo of it on their computer screen, making it look like some really shitty leak. And I just gotta say props to everyone who's doing that. It's really good. I appreciate them. I think they're hilarious. Now we'll never know if any of them are real, and I think that's the best thing that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, the good old boy who cried wolf, you know, if everyone's talking about an event coming, the one person that's actually has the proof and evidence and knows for sure that it's coming, nobody's going to listen to them anyways. Uh, and I also think that the fact that people are memeing so much about it, first off, it does show that, like, there's some good memes within the community, but I also think it shows, at least to some degree, a desire for, you know, a curiosity about what the competitive scene of this game holds. I mean, I remember back in Dota, like, people were playing Dota when it got released in Dota 2, when it got released into beta. But when Valve announced, hey, we're going to host the International, it's going to be this $1 million tournament, unprecedented in video game history. You know, I don't think something like that would work again because, you know, it's already been done. You can't, like, say, wham, same thing again. Like, the hype around it's not going to be the exact same. But what it reminded me of, this is like a small tangent into my real life here. I'm currently looking to buy a house, and basically they said that if you don't have like a real estate agent, oftentimes when you email, this is how at least it works where I live. If you email the home seller about looking to make an offer and a visit and everything, that they won't generally take you seriously because they don't think you're as invested. Like, you could have just pulled up the website and sent them a message. But with like a real estate agent, then you obviously are invested and very dedicated and serious to getting this done. And I guess I feel like that mentality is how I feel about Valve with Deadlock, basically, is that until they've really shown they're invested in their own competitive scene, also something that Jonas talked about in our previous episode is it feels like there needs to be some degree of an investment in their streamer content creator scene. I feel like until that happens, honestly, nowadays when it comes to like competitive games like this, it's really hard to convince people to take it seriously. In regards to like these devs mean business. The game can only speak for itself so much, and I know we've kind of beaten this point to a dead like a dead horse almost. But when I think about how much people are memeing, I'm just like, not like a cry for help, but like maybe a distant plea for like, come on, give us a tournament or something. I know we don't want to jump the gun, meaning like we're talking about the big announcement, release 30 heroes, order of operations here, people. But yeah, I guess for me it's like I am in eager anticipation of when does Valve announce a big tournament that you know, they're gonna invest and put like on in a stadium and all that kind of stuff, and just say, you know what, maybe nobody shows up, but let's see what happens. And I feel like that's the kind of thing they did with the International, right? And I feel like it would convince people to give this game more of a chance if they saw the devs really taking a chance, basically.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the competitive scene, there are luckily there are some community and grassroots efforts that are actually pretty good. For those of you who like want to kind of see what competitive deadlock even looks like. I'm assuming if you know about our podcast, you may already have like seen or heard of some of these things. But I think personally, the best one that's out there that I actually watch nearly every week is the Deadlock Fight Night. I believe there is one tonight, the day of which we're recording. I don't know if this is gonna get out today. It may come out tomorrow, so maybe you might have just missed it. But it's actually really good. It's I think watching some of the games, seeing how the game like looks at a really high level, teams that are like actually practicing and scrimming. Um, it's really interesting. I think it's actually really intense and really fun to watch. You'll see pretty much the entire Twitch section of Deadlock will just become DFN, Deadlock Fight Night. Everyone that is streaming is watching these games. So if you guys want to see what it's about, this isn't like we're not like affiliated with them in any way. I think it's a legitimately really cool thing that's been put together by this group of people, and you should check it out. I think it's really good, especially if you're like, oh, curious about what um you know what it is that they're that comp scene looks like in its current form, because it changes really fast with these updates. But yeah, I don't know, I'm hoping that we have had some major changes in like the viewer experience. It's gotten a lot better. I think when we switched to 3 lanes down from 4, the chaos of the game is really hard from a spectator perspective. So reducing some of that chaos, I think, was a general good move for the game. It made it easier to follow the action of what's going on. Like having to ping pong between 3 lanes is substantially easier than ping ponging between 4 lanes in a group stage. As anyone who's watched or played a MOBA, you can know how difficult it is to see the action in 3 lanes, let alone what would be 4.
Yeah, I mean the observers in Dota, like there's like, you know, well-known observers that are like world class, and they still have trouble sometimes catching all of the kills in action that are happening in separate lanes. So in Deadlock, part of it was definitely the clutter. What I'm curious about, maybe as like a proposed middle ground, because I do think, because it's 6-on-6, because it's like three-dimensional, the verticality aspect of it as a spectator, I would be curious if Valve would start having somewhat regular tournaments, and or at least some organization has like a league that you know, is more than just like the fight night's great. I have tuned in a few times myself. But just meaning like more stakes, basically bigger prize pool, like allows for orgs to enter into it and all that kind of stuff. I would love the idea of watching Deadlock from specific players streaming it. You know, it's like, say Mikel S, like he's on, I think he's on VP it is, and
Yeah, he's on VP.
it's like, instead of watching VP like casted from a mainstream, which should be an option, I can also watch Mikel S play it and hear their comms. That'd be very interesting to me as a way that I think could maybe this isn't how it's done in the absolute biggest tournaments, because obviously teams want to, you know, keep some of their comms and strategies and stuff private. But I also think because Deadlock is much more skill based than a MOBA on average, like it is a lot more mechanical prowess, I don't think it's like as important to conceal this type of information. And I'm just thinking of things where at the end of the day, you want to have competitive integrity, which I don't think this necessarily jeopardizes. But I think there's probably going to need to be some, I don't want to say like concessions, but maybe some compromises that they don't normally make with MOBAs or Dota specifically, in the spectator experience, that will entice people to want to watch it. You know what I mean? It's like in Dota, imagine how many people would just go crazy, you know, when they watch True Sight and they got to listen to the way the teams communicated in the finals. Imagine if they got to do that actually watching a live game. That's never going to happen in Dota because strategy is so important. But something like that, I think, could be a really cool selling point for Deadlock. Purely theoretical, but maybe there's some middle ground in there somewhere.
Yeah, you're talking about, you know, them bringing in like kind of like a regular, you know, tournaments of some kind. Like, what if they did something like a Deadlock professional circuit of some kind, like a, I don't know, like a DPC?
That
You
would be
think that anything?
cool. I think that seems like a never before tried
I don't
or
think I've ever seen that.
yeah, I feel like there's no way something like that would fail. There's no way to clog too much of the year with too many events and keeping people for 6 weeks at a time. That is
Yeah.
exactly what happened in Dota, guys. For the record, DPC, well done. I like, just for the viewers that are like, what the fuck are they talking about? That actually maybe sounds like a good idea. I honestly don't
Poorly
think.
implemented,
I,
but a good idea.
I was gonna say, I think actually implementing it properly could easily work. I wouldn't even take like the failure of the Dota Pro Circuit as an indicator that that shouldn't work, or that a similar idea would not work. That's kind of my problem with Valve when it comes to Dota specifically. We talk about like immortal matchmaking, we talk about the DPC. It feels like so much of it, it's like, we tried this, you didn't like it, so fuck off.
Yeah,
Rather than like,
you're deal with it.
how about we reiterate on an idea, because there's no way to predict what could have gone wrong with this. You need people's feedback and player feedback to know, like, oh, I guess our seasons are not condensed enough. We have too much like volume of time with not enough games, because competitive teams are playing like one game a week, you know? And it's like, well, maybe we could have just done not that, you know? But at the end of the day, I guess I've got like remnants of the previous episode with Jonas where he was talking about like they did this with Dota, please don't do that with Deadlock, like we can do it differently and all that kind of stuff. I just think like don't do that with the competitive scene for Deadlock. I think there's a lot of privileges that they have with a new game, but there's also a lot of privileges that I think might serve as a bait that they're allowed to do in Dota. Like because the game has been around for so long, there's just aspects of the community, the tournament experience, all that I think they get away with because of that dynamic. And it's fine. There's nothing like particularly wrong with those things. I just hope they don't take like one-to-one inspiration from a game that has had such a history and such like depth to the community and the memes and the players and all that. Like if they don't encourage players to like have personality or like basically market themselves and they're allowed to kind of behave like Dota players do, which is just games over here, crowds over here, like we're just in our own little bubble. If they're allowed to do that again with the players, where the players just don't interact with the community, they don't really have their own personality, I don't think they're going to have that privilege in the Deadlock game itself, because at the end of the day, the story in Dota has already kind of been written. Like a lot of these players, everyone knows them so well that even if I never hear from Maui 2000 again, I know who this guy is. There's lots of funny memes around him, but there's not that history in Deadlock. So if there's some sort of way when we immerse ourselves in the competitive scene of Deadlock, that we can also get to know the players and have the teams do skins, you know, kind of like they do in CSGO, stuff like this. You know, I feel like for this episode, I was just thinking of all the ideas they could come up with, because they haven't shown us any of this yet. There's a lot of theoretical, like, what are they going to do? Like, we're excited about the content of the game, but if nobody's watching it, it's tough to sell a competitive game, basically. It's okay if it's like an RPG or, you know, a world builder. It's stuff that's okay, but
Yeah.
like people can play that without watching it. But with competitive, that's just not the case, I believe.
I think you're right. I think when it comes to competitive in this game, I think it's going to be very successful. I think a lot of people are going to try and make it in Deadlock as a player, because it is extremely fun to play. There's a lot of people that are playing right now and scrimming on teams. There are sponsored teams, unsponsored teams, and it's going to get to a point, I think, that it will be successful just naturally, even if it ends up being exclusively a grassroots type of thing. But that's all going to have to wait until the player base grows. And it's not really like that big of a deal at the moment. Of course, like we need the full announcement of the game. We need to come into open beta and then eventually the full release. We need Valve to do a few things as well in terms of like helping announce like that first tournament and bringing it full circle back to the sleepover at someone's house. You know, that's where we're gonna be. No, I think that was a reference to one of the memes someone made. It was a Deadlock sleepover for the first event. So just in case you were confused on that one,
The inside joke that Ricky is inside himself with here.
yes,
Very good.
yeah. Of course. I think for the most part, the biggest thing is that like I have complete faith that the competitive scene in this game is going to be successful. I'm not worried about it like falling flat. I think overall, there are going to be a lot of really passionate people about this game, and whenever you have that, you have enough of that, it usually survives. I mean, and like you said, it doesn't have like same privileges that like Dota has, but I think because there is such a passionate player base behind it, it'll help quite a bit.
Yeah, I guess my final note on this whole idea is based on what you said, because I totally agree with everything you just said. I don't believe that the player passion will be enough in a new game, basically. I think I can easily
Fair.
succinctly say what I was trying to say, actually. I think you kind of helped me articulate my final thought, which is the privilege they don't have is to rely on the passion of the community, because in Dota, that still carries the game. And I don't think that you can do that unless the momentum has already carried you this far. And you also, as Valve, gave it a gigantic push, like just a go get him, boy, like back with the international one. So I think if Valve were to do something like that in tandem with the passion of the community. I absolutely believe in that. But I also, sadly, I don't believe that the passion of the community is enough to carry it. So if Valve shows that effort, that investment into the competitive scene, even just briefly, like for like a year or two, where they just get the community off the ground running, I don't think it has to be some like 5, 10 year, 20-year long venture for Valve. I think it's just that initial boost that we're not only talking about when the game releases, when they make it free, like accessible to everyone, but more so about this whole competitive scene. Because if you put $1 million in a game, for instance, there's going to be people that were on the fence, like, I like playing games, I take them seriously, but if I'm considering being a professional, I want to know if I make it that there's something at the end there. And right now in Deadlock, I think the players are literally carried by the fact that they love the game, which is awesome. That says so much. That bodes so much good notions for the future of the game itself. And when we're just talking about what it's going to take to get that extra competitive pool, the innovation, all that kind of stuff, I see that from Valve. I'm not expecting it, but I do believe that if they put this much time and effort into making the game themselves, that they would also do that for the game. So I'm also optimistic, just like you said.
Yeah. Cool. I love that. Well, we are rounding out the end of the episode here, everybody, and we're gonna always bring it back to the one staple segment that we have, the what did we learn this week? I think you went first when
I
we
did, because it was actually Jonas that went first, and then it
Yeah.
was me, but then it was you last. So you get
All
to
right.
lead us off this week.
All right. So I've actually been working on a cosplay for an event I'm doing this weekend. So that's been really
Oh
fun, and
yeah.
I've been learning a lot about like kind of I decided this time I wanted to do something a little bit better. So I actually have been 3D printing a lot of the accessories for the cosplay, and I have been learning how to essentially kind of like what I call it's like finishing, kind of like the steps that it takes to take like a 3D print and making it not look like a 3D print and look something more realistic. So I have been really kind of working on that this whole week, like sanding down the 3D print, kind of I've been using like a wood filler in a way to kind of like re-smooth it out, then sanding it again and then primer. And it's just like now I'm finally getting to a point where it's like, all right, it looks really good. So I've been kind of learning that this week, the whole process of doing some kind of like yeah, cosplay
Nice.
props and accessories and stuff like that. Yeah.
Dude, I've seen some of the time and effort that people put into cosplays, so I have to assume the process itself is like very fun and rewarding to see just how much time. Like, yeah, I remember seeing somebody did the main character from Monster, or one of the main characters from Monster Hunter, and it said it took her like 3 days just to make the wig. Like 3 days worth of work hours, not like 3 days
Yeah.
worth of
Like a couple
time.
hours
Yeah,
here
so,
or there, yeah.
yeah. So the fact that I was, and it was just like just for the wig, and the wig looked spectacular, by the way. You guys can go look that up. But yeah, I mean, that's awesome, man. Cool for you. I look forward to seeing some pictures on your socials of you and your cosplay.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, I'd say this week has been about about adulting for me. I finally finished assembling all the pieces for my new computer to buy. I haven't upgraded my computer in like 4 years. As a streamer, that's kind of a travesty. So I guess I'm kind of reorienting myself with the specs and the
Fun stuff.
performances of all the aspects of the computer and what I should be going for. So I will be building that later tonight with my friend Andrew, who will be helping me out. And then also been learning a lot about the Dutch housing market. So very, very adulting things for this week. Mainly that the housing market is atrocious, guys. If you're looking to move to Utrecht, Netherlands, do not take it lightly. That is going to be a tough sell to find a place at asking price or find a place at all. So fortunately, I already have somewhere that I live, so I don't have to like be on a timer. But yeah, you know, Godspeed to myself
Best of luck.
for finding a place. But honestly, it's been fun. Like, meaning it's been interesting, and despite the fact that I know it's always going to be a stressful event, and I'm not exactly looking forward to it all playing out, uh, it's been fun to learn more about the area around me that I've lived in for a long time, because I've never critically assessed, do I want to live exactly here? Do I want to live exactly here? What are the prices over here and all that kind of stuff. So it's amazing how you can be in a specific area and not really ever look deeper past the surface level of your surroundings until you have to. You know what I mean? So that's been my last week.
See, that's true. That's actually kind of a pretty cool kind of realization. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
I can't say I would have ever thought about the housing market over there, but
Just in
yeah, makes sense.
case, maybe for the
Yeah,
one
I'll keep.
viewer that watches this ever. By then, when they
Yeah,
watch it, maybe it's like 6 months down the road, and this housing market doesn't apply. So, you know,
yeah,
the one person
classic.
that's looking for a house in Utrecht, Netherlands, I shout out to you.
Yeah. Well, I love it. That's going to bring episode 18 of Deadlock and Load to a close. I want to say thank you all so much for listening and watching, whether it be on either YouTube or Spotify. You can find us on both. But we'll be back next week with episode 19. Maybe some cool stuff cooking from there. And we're going to be looking at another guest episode here at some point, depending on what the update cycle is going to look like for Deadlock. But for now, I want to bid you all adieu. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
See ya.